which is something that happens a lot for stories that get passed down generations. It's a form of preservation where the story or the essence of the story outlives the story itself. So you'll find a story being passed down, and when it goes down a few generations, even if the story will have been modified a bit, the key lesson or the key takeaway from it remains the same. So this is my belief about most of the stories of origin that are still flying out there, because for example, in the African communities, and we've got more than 5,000 tribes, which means 5,000 different languages, 5,000 different beliefs and histories. So most of these tribes will have a diverse tale of origin, but you'll find there's a string that you can tie in all of the religions. Okay, so God, just to be clear, because there are a lot of religions out there that have different names. So I'm talking about the source of all power, the beginning, the I am. And that I am is very significant because according to the Apocryphal, everything that is right now visible or invisible came forth when God decided to manifest himself. So the manifestation, the moment he opened up his soul or his word or him, whatever it was that was him at that time, the moment that he exhaled in manifestation, everything started racing outward. So that is God. Also, with him was the manifestation of Christ, and in the ancient religious text it's referred to as his son, and also the Holy Spirit, which in ancient texts is referred, I believe it's what is being referred to a female spirit that brought forth other positive aspects that were manifested as angelic beings or powers. I must give a warning that whenever I refer to an angel, it could be an angel in form of a spiritual being, or an angel in form of spiritual power. And both are capable, both have intelligence, they can respond to commands. That's why we have prayers, that's why we have decrees, declarations. That's why it's important to declare things about your life, because we live in a conscious world. In Ephesians chapter 6, the armor of God, if you look at the attributes of the armor of God, the belt, the breastplate of righteousness, belt of truth, the gospel, the peace, what you'll find when you look at these attributes is that they are all high vibrational aspects of a human being, meaning to be. But when I have love emanating from me, I'll have an aura of love that is emanating from me. When I'm speaking the truth, I'm working in a positive energetic field, and this what we call in parlance that is used in most motivational and positive affirmation like kind of places is positive energy. And you'll see that for most people who explain it have actually a chart where the highest energetic aspect is graded, and the lowest energetic aspect of a human being, which is, I believe it's shame, is usually at the lowest level of the ladder. And at the lowest place of shame is where you're the most exposed to spiritual intrusion, because this is a spiritual power, and the more positive that you keep yourself, the more shielded you are from spiritual attacks. So what Ephesians chapter 6 is telling you is that keep your vibration lifted, keep yourself in high spirits, maintain a spirit of love, joy, peace, good nature, righteousness, maintain good works, maintain the help in this protection that becomes a shield against the darts of the enemy. Remember also that I've told you that these things are powers, and as powers they have a are conscious. So when you're surrounding yourself with love, you're actually invoking the power of love itself as an angel. So remember to give it some decrees to carry into fruition. The next point that we need to take into consideration when understanding the spiritual beings of the earth is that the earth is billions of years old. Billions. Now, this is how you know. Everything that came from God was alive. Now, so imagine the time that it will take for something that is alive, coming from God, turning into soil, first through decomposition and basically turning into earth. It will take millions, if not billions. And the earth eventually turning into rocks, turning into the water separating from the rest of the being and becoming oceans. That is a job for billions of years. Also consider the distance that it has taken to travel from wherever it is that the beginning was. When the scientists look out into the not just the local universe, which is the Milky, where the Milky Way resides, when they look into outer space beyond the Milky Way, one of the things that they tell is of the immense speed with which the Earth is running forth across space. Another thing that they will tell you is that the solar system, which is the local group which makes part of the Earth, is also racing. It's racing even as it's, they usually show us the Earth going like this around the sun. Now imagine, as the Earth is doing that, the sun is also moving, and in the process of moving, it's also going around the Milky Way galaxy. So the entire galaxy is, let's say this is the galaxy because it's usually shown in circles. So it's going like this, and the speed is so fast, dizzying fast. So those are the things that we need to take into consideration when looking at the things that we are part of. We are part of a greater plan. We are part of a greater incomprehensible things that we are unable to understand right now. So apart from that, there have been dead civilizations here on Earth. There's a time that somebody asked Christ about the ages, and I remember he responded something like, we do not have contact to the previous ages, but there have been many ages that have arisen and passed. So these are the civilizations that we see in the form of pyramids. We see them in the form of the gigantic buildings. We see them in the form of the stone hinges and other stone hinges or hinges, and formations that cannot be understood. There are even civilizations that from the satellite can be seen deep in the middle of oceans, which means they existed when the ocean was not there, basically, or was in another place. Then, speaking of civilization, remember these were beings, even if they did not look like us. They may have lived where your estate is, could have been the home of a certain giant or a certain family that was maybe influential, maybe a king, maybe it was a prison or a holding center, maybe you're living on a cemetery. So we will never know if that cemetery existed on that spot a billion years ago. The question is, what would you say of the spirits of the dead of that civilization that existed a billion years ago, or the civilization or the family that lived in the same place 1,000 years ago? How will you expect, or what do you think happened to their spirits? So these are the things that we need to consider, especially as Christians, because one of the things that makes our life difficult as Christians is that we've been told, or we've been taught, to shoot first and ask questions later. And we're sharing this one with a lot of spirits that some may not be even in, they may not be concerned with us. They're just minding their own business. Our world is separated from their world, not physically, but spiritually. They're in another realm, you're in another realm, and this other civilization that came 1,000 years from the other one is in a different realm. But you see, as a Christian, if you go to a new place, and launch a spiritual warfare against spirits that were not at war with you, which happens a lot. It would open up a door for those spirits to start attacking, which is one of the reasons why you'll find that sometimes you may take okay, there's a person who told me that there's a time they went to buy land, and when after the documents were signed and everything was done, she called a group of a church to go and dedicate that land. Now the problem is, and dedication is not bad, in fact, it's something that I do advocate for new places, new houses, but I don't know what happened in that place. But as soon as that prayer was done, hell broke loose in her house. People got sick, and I'm talking about near-death kind of illnesses or unexplained kind of happenings that almost drove her to hit rock bottom. And she was telling me that she's tracing all this to that place, that after that happened, after those prayers happened, all hell broke loose. And this is what I think happened in that place. Either she bought land which had been sanctified, or they call it consecrated to a certain being, number one. Second, or it was land which had been previously inhabited by a spirit that felt territorial over that place, or it was a previous civilization which was unknown to her, especially because it was a new place. So when she invaded that place and went in to bind and to curse and to basically declare warfare, they responded. The thing about some of these rural areas that we live in, especially in deeply spiritual places, like where I come from, you'll find that there are things that are done to ancestral spirits. So sometimes you never know how far the ancestral spirits go. You will never know, but you'll find that in times of whenever a big ceremony happens within the home, like a death, or especially a death. Okay, I know about the death. Although I know that in the years past there used to be ceremonies about famine or blah blah. But for death, whenever a person dies, there has to be an offering given to the ancestral spirits. And the explanation, which I understand, especially with the members of that family, is that they do another ceremony to rejoin the members of the community in covenant by either cutting of hair, so a sacrifice is offered, and such kind of things. Now, in cases of attacks from such spirits, I don't know how these people can be helped. I really don't know. But one of the ways in which a war can be won against some spiritual powers is that when they do attack, because sometimes the attack that they will launch is not proportional to what happened or what is considered to be the cause. So it's possible to triumph, but it's also I would advise people before buying land, before renting into new houses. First of all, don't wait to get the house in order to pray for it. Pray for it first out. This is something that I've also suffered of, but I would be so excited about the house, then pray for it first, and then after a few days I realized that it's probably not land that I would want to live in, because probably there's a spirit that had been stationed there, or an animal. And this is something else that should also not be ignored, the spirits of animals, because there are some animals, especially animals that were tampered with by previous ages. Because if you look into the book of Enoch, you start seeing that the invasion of men and the changing of or the mingling of the seed of man with the seed of angel did not stop there. It also proceeded into the mixing of the seed of man with the seed of animals, the seed of the seed of the angels. A lot of things are happening, and you could find this in the stories of people who have lived before us, who talk about seeing the giants, talk about seeing the half animal, half person beings. And we have recent testimonies from soldiers who have been in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran, of beings that looked somehow out of this world. So it's important to also consider that we are interacting sometimes with this being, and it's important to, when you're buying land, pray about it before you buy, so that you can know if there is something attached to it. We are also from a history where some people were maybe polytheists, and some people did have consecrated places, or consecrated, some of these places were just a huge tree that was consecrated, and a few years later somebody, some fool comes and cuts that tree and builds your house with it, or some fool comes and cuts that tree there, then another one comes and builds your apartment, your 20 rows of apartment on a land that had been consecrated and given to an idol. What will happen will be a few years or a few months of people getting slapped in their sleep, people getting choked, people getting beaten up, because you've got spirits living in the same space with you, and some of these spirits are not they're not good spirits, because or they're just angry spirits. You never know what these people are worshipping, or some of them don't identify you. Maybe it was a different tribe that lived, or a different race of people, or to make it worse, a different generation of age whose ending was so traumatic that all the spirits that were in that age went out with a bang and with trauma, and they're all bitter. I don't know how else to explain the bitterness of demons, aside from the fact that apart from the good vibes that come from God, remember that this negative energy, the negative vibes, also have a consciousness. And so if a person allows themselves to carry these vibes, eventually they'll be seen as evil, because it will be a person who is emanating this darkness, and the negative ones are called the powers of darkness. Yes, so I've spoken about the interactions with demons. Yes, there's that interaction with demons. And also remember, our previous generations had outer worldly beings visit the earth. Genesis calls them sons of God. Enoch calls them angels. The script of Enki and other ancient scripts refer to them as gods, or Anunnaki, or and our science refers to them as aliens. Whatever name by which they are referred to, these were beings whose territory was not on this earth, but they came and they gained rule over the earth. And as the Bible says, we fight against principalities of this world. There are also the people who, if you believe the ancient scripts, they introduced genetic manipulation of people, genetic manipulation of animals, genetic manipulation of plants, and admixed even having sex with the men that were on the earth. So maybe that will explain why the different races came about. Or is it talking about a time of mass vaccination? So recent ancestry. Remember, men are spirits first. So in my culture, for example, whenever a person dies, for example, if the person had traveled to the city, and in the course of the travel they passed on, after, just before the burial, when the body is being taken to the rural home for burial, you'll find some elders in the family will come to visit the place where he died, the house where he died. And the reason for this visit is what they call retrieving the soul of the dead from the house. because it's believed that whenever a person dies, their soul will remain there until it's taken and escorted back to the to its ancestral area. So these elders will come to that house, they will have a meal, and then after the meal they will rise and then head into that ancestral place without talking to anybody. They're not allowed to make conversation, they're not allowed to greet anybody, they're not allowed to sing, they're not allowed to do anything to anybody, no other human interaction until they reach to their home, because it's believed that trying any such interaction may interrupt the transportation of the soul, which is believed to be following them until they reach the rural area. So that is what happens with my people. Now there are people who don't do that. So does that mean that the souls of the dead remain in the houses and in the apartments where they are found? Does that explain why there are stories of places where somebody died being haunted, somebody's soul was not retrieved? Does it explain the silent funeral processions and the burial ceremonies in some of our rural areas here include actually giving a gift, a blood sacrifice to the person who has died, because they're believed to become a recent ancestor. And most of the people in the community will actually begin anticipating seeing that recent ancestor in their dreams, and it's usually this ancestor who starts giving instruction on the burial. It's not called the burial, the remembrance, because they usually have a remembrance day for every day. Every dead person will have a day where the person who died is remembered. Most of the time it's usually a year. It's not just picked. Somebody from the family, one of the elders will come and say he came or she came and said the day is such and such a day. So recent ancestry, that's another one of the spiritual beings on the earth. One that we often forget are the spirits of men who are who are alive. And this one reminds me of an incident where a friend of mine was making jokes about something that she wanted me to react with different, maybe by humoring her, and I did not do it. So I knew she was angry. So what she did is that she decided to come visit me, and I knew that she did not like me, that she was angry, but I wondered, why is she insisting on coming to visit me? Now I found out when she came. So on that day, early in the morning, in the witching hours, as she was asleep in a different bed, in a different room, she came, or her spirit came and to choke me. Okay, it was actually funny because I choked her back, but that is just one way of illustration of how the spirits of men who are still alive are parts of the spiritual beings of this earth. Remember, you're a spirit first before any other thing. So there are people who astral project themselves into people's houses to do all kinds of mischievous things. You've heard of astral projections. There are people who are astral project into universes. Now in Africa, people also astral project, but they do it into people's houses, especially in deeply witchcrafty areas like where I am right now. People will astral project themselves into your house to try and do cheeky things to you, to try and just do weird things. I don't know. I would like to research on the ancestral history of this place, because I find it quite interesting that being a people who are associated with the Bantu major group, they're quite deeply spiritual, and in a negative way. The spirituality is most of the time used in a negative way. Maybe it was positive some years ago, or maybe they did not have a culture of excommunicating like the rest of the tribes did. But anyway, so finally, spirits of men, that is also important, and the kind of armor that you have around yourself. Your energetic field is important in keeping these beings, because most of them are low vibration beings. They carry the negative energies, and by carrying the positive energies, you're able to repel them. So in the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 18 talks of necromancy, which is contacting the spirits of the dead, which is what I'm referring to as ancestors. Remember Prophet Samuel in the book of Samuel, when he had died, and the king, or is it kings, one of those, when the king had died, when Samuel had died and Saul had been rejected by God, he wanted so much to hear from God that he went to a medium and told the medium to call out the dead spirit of Samuel. Of course, Samuel was called up, and when the witch saw Samuel, or the medium saw Samuel, she was afraid, because she asked Paul, why did you make me do this? Because he saw as if in her perception Samuel was going to injure her or to attack her. I don't know. So that is an example of people in the Bible contacting the spirit of the dead. Another thing that we need to be conscious of the spirits that affect the spirits of this world is, we've spoken about God being the source and everything emanating from Him being alive, and we've also talked about the earth at one point being alive and kicking. So it's also important to look at the elements of the earth, which is the air, the water, the soil. These were alive at one point. They made up a body at one point, and fire also. Remember, the earth is an electromagnet, so it's working also with fire. So you'll find that in your dreams, sometimes some of your dreams will be presented to you by these elements. Either the earth, you'll see the earth doing things, or you'll see water doing things, or you'll see the wind doing things, or fire doing things. So these are also powers that you need to be conscious of. And sometimes, just like your tribe, which I've said that is usually a group that is connected by ancestry, sometimes even by covenant. So as you dream, you'll find that you may see that some of them are based within your tribal area, which means basically that the spirits that rule over that area either trying to give you a message, or depending on the situation of the dream. If you're in a school which is a collection of many people who have a common thing, you may start finding yourself dreaming about the school. So this is just and it doesn't necessarily have to be the people who are in the school. It could just be another group of a spiritual crew taking the shape or the personas of people that you know in order to pass a message. So that's one thing to take into consideration, that seeing a face doesn't necessarily mean that it's that person. People can come to you in the faces of people that you know to induce your cooperation, especially negative spirits. I've seen there's a lot of deception in negative dreams where you're under attack, or something is trying to get you into a covenant that you don't understand. You'll find that some of the people that are trying to get you to indulge in activities become familiar, so that to help you cooperate. And when you're not cooperating, they'll keep morphing into different people to try to convince you. So sometimes that's one way of knowing whether a dream is from light or from darkness. When it's from light, then manipulation is not there at all. Actually, the manipulation will not be there. There's no need of coming into and changing from one person to the next. 1 minute this person is my cousin, the next minute that person is my pastor, the next minute the person is my mother, the next minute they've changed to my teacher, because they're trying to convince you to allow them to do the things that they're doing. So in your dreams and in your prophecies, it's important to know that all these spiritual beings of the earth will try to manifest themselves through you, or they will sometimes become part of your crew if they're, for example, if your family, most of the time dreams about your family, if it's a united family, they'll be trying to help you, but it should not be forgotten that not all families are perfect. There are families which are at war, they're narcissistic families, there are families which are just hurting and they're doing things to each other. So